Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in. My name is Jocelyn, and I host Breaking Barriers, the Wednesday Spotlight Lunch Hour Show. Breaking Barriers focuses on, but is not limited to, showcasing the arts in the greater Stockton area by providing a platform for creative expression of views, issues, and current events. Spotlight on the Arts is a KXVS.org program that runs from noon to 1, focusing on local music, art, and food. If you do a search on Facebook for Spotlight on the Arts, KXVS.org, and like our page, you will get the most up-to-date information on upcoming guests, events, and activities. If you're interested in becoming a member or donating to KXVS, you can go on to the website at KXVS.org and find out all sorts of information about membership and donating. One way of donating is if you go online and use the PayPal link off of the KXVS.org website, or by mail, KXVS, The Voice of Stockton, P.O. Box 4123, Stockton, California. And if you make your checks payable to KXVS, The Voice of Stockton, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so donations made to The Voice of Stockton can be tax deductible. So, with that being said, I'd like to welcome today's guest, artist Salvador Castío.
Hi, good to be here.
Thank you for stopping by the station today on your lunch hour. It's such a gorgeous day today. It was raining this morning. The first thing I did, I woke up at 6 a.m. I said to myself, I need to get out there before all this goes away. It's like gray, beautiful. I know there's going to be a lot of people that are going to disagree with me, but the summers out here in the valley are super harsh. And, you know, coming from the Bay Area, it's I'm still not used to it. I've lived here for, gosh,
Right.
15 years or something.
Yeah.
I'm still, it's so hard to get used to.
Yeah, they're brutal.
It's pretty brutal. And so this morning I was like, okay, I'm going to go out there. I'm going to do my walk, my 3-mile walk. You know, I try and make it sound awesome by saying that it's a 5K. Okay. I'm going to do my 5K walk jog. And so I went out. I live in Weston Ranch in the neighborhood there. It was just awesome. It was a great walk along the green belt there.
Awesome.
But Salvador actually is my guest today. He's an awesome artist. We've got a lot to talk about today. So I'm going to start with a little bit of his background to start the show with. And Salvador and I met on social media, just like a lot of us do. We meet on social media, and we've been like trying to get together and just like meet up or have coffee or something for like, I don't know how long it's been. It was like a couple years or something like that. And so yeah, and then finally, you know, earlier this year, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna reach out to a bunch of people. It's time, and you know, somehow the stars and planets aligned, and I'm like, okay, what are you up to, Salva? It's time. And so he was really, really cool about it, and just, you know, totally approachable. I was like, okay, cool, let's do it. Let's go meet for lunch or coffee or something. And now, you know, he's always telling me a little bit about art history, and you know, that's the thing. And another thing that we had in common also is we're both Academy of Art University alumni. And, you know, we share a lot of stories from being at the college there in San Francisco. And, you know, he has a lot of background on history, like art history. Whereas for me, I did a lot of more of the commercial graphic design, you know, stuff. And he's fine arts illustration. So I get a lot of education from that as well. So I love being around him. So Salvador,
Yes.
I got some questions for you.
All
You can tell
right.
us a little about yourself, and I understand you grew up here in Stockton. Yeah.
I grew up, I was born in the Bay Area,
Oh yes.
and I was born in Martinez. Grew up, the early part of my childhood was spent in Brentwood. And then when I was around 6 years old, we came to Stockton, and we lived here until I was about 13.
Mm-hmm.
And then we moved to Fresno. And then I was there until I graduated high school and went off to art school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so.
So the art, you decided to go to art school in down south, right?
I did. That was
So really,
that's something I hadn't specifically planned to go down south. But when I was in high school, I had a wonderful instructor who really took an interest in my talent and a couple of friends of mine. And so she was curious to know where I wanted to go. And she said, well, you know, I'm going to start getting some catalogs for you so you can start getting an idea and whatnot. And she took me and these two friends to a portfolio review where all the major art schools from around the country come to down at CalArts in Valencia. So we went down there, and I just walked around, showed my portfolio, and lo and behold, Parsons expressed an interest. And at the time, I had no idea of their standing as an art school.
Yeah.
I just thought, oh, cool, an art school wants me to come and interview. And so
tell us a little about Parsons. I mean, I know Parsons has got a great reputation as a school, and
they are one of the probably finest art schools in the world. I mean, the last time I looked, they were ranked number 2 below the Royal College of Art.
And who are some? Do you know of any artists that actually have graduated from been or went to Parsons? I know that there's quite a few.
Well, when I was there, the director of illustration of the illustration department was a guy named Everett Peck, who was a well-known illustrator, and some of your public might know his work from Rolling Stone in the 80s, and he did an album cover for Oingo Boingo.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so he was out there doing illustration and stuff, and being department head of the illustration department.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So you grew up in Martinez, like you said. How did your surroundings and experiences influence your path to becoming an artist?
That's a good question. That's a great question. Well, I'll tell you one thing that influenced me more than anything else in my childhood was me being an only child.
Okay.
I mean, any only child knows.
You get really creative.
You get really creative, and you just got to find a way to kill time.
Yeah.
You know, and so the drawing just was natural.
Came naturally to you.
Yeah, it came naturally to me. So I started at when I was 5.
Wow.
Yeah, I started at 5.
So were there any artists at that time that you kind of thought, wow, this is cool, I'm going to see if I can emulate that. I'm going to see if who were some of the earlier influences for you?
The first thing that I was into were comics, American comics. And at the time, I mean, there was a group of artists that were always in the comics. 2 of those people that you just couldn't avoid seeing their work if you were reading comics at the time. One was Jack Kirby, the other was Neil Adams. And, they were just omnipresent, no matter what, they were always there along with other people, So they were the first, I'd say, 2 people that I can recall, really kind of exciting me about wanting to draw and stuff,
And it seems like you've had a really good support system that kind of led you to that path too. You had mentioned to me before that your mom was very influential and very supportive, which is outstanding.
Yes, my mom was absolutely the biggest influence. I mean, and my biggest support system.
Yeah.
From the get-go, she just took note that I was spending, large amounts of time drawing and, locked away in my room. She knew
you were up to something, and she knew that it was all, it was good.
Yeah.
It was good stuff.
So always, if I needed something, whether it be supplies or books or whatever,
That's
was
awesome.
not a problem. Never
Yeah.
a problem.
I know that there's some kids that I talk to nowadays, some of the youth that I kind of work with at the high school, they say, my parents don't think it's a good idea for me to get into art. They want me to become an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor.
Right.
I think that me personally, when I talk to my kids, I want them to focus on what they're good at, what they have a passion in. And so it's good that you had that wonderful support system as well. And I do remember a story that you were telling me about when you had presented something to, was it your grandfather? He asked you to draw something. And right off the bat, you're like, all right, I can do that.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little about that story?
Sure. My mom was she was a single parent. And so she would, drop me off at my grandparents on the weekends sometimes. And so I had some comics with me, and my grandfather's like, what are you looking at? Let me look at that. And he's leafing through the book, and next thing you know, he's like, here, draw this.
And it turned out pretty good.
And, that really kind of hooked me in. I was like, wow, I love doing this.
Yes.
and that was it.
Yes, yes,
know,
absolutely.
kind of a done deal.
Absolutely. It's really good background, really good history on there. You also had some experience when you were going to Parsons, I think it was, when you had mentioned the San Diego Comic Con.
Yeah, well, San Diego, my first San Diego Comic Con was in 1984. And so I ended up there because, well, I had to be there to show my work. I mean, I was just like,
Yeah.
I have to go show my work to these publishers.
Yeah.
So all the big
Yeah,
publishers
absolutely.
were there, as you know. So I went off and then showed my portfolio, and got my first taste of real feedback from editors, which is, it's pretty harsh. They're not there to kind of cheerlead, they're there to be honest. And so for the first time in my life, I had people telling me, pointing out things that I really needed to work on. And the one thing that was almost unanimous was, well, keep working, keep drawing, and which I figure they tell anybody,
Yeah, yeah.
But that's really it, just drawing is really just constant drawing is what does it.
Just keep on plugging away and
Keep on
improving
plugging away.
your art, just honing your skills. I know that when I was going to Academy of Art and I was studying graphic design, learning Photoshop, learning Illustrator back in the mid 90s, when a lot of those software programs were still starting. We're talking a toolbox with just 12 tools. Now it's like everything's blended in. You can do whatever you want in Illustrator. You can do whatever you want in Photoshop, and can meld them together. And there's like a bazillion different tools and different filters and everything else. It was very simple for me back then. But even then, when I would present something for a project that we had due, they were very critical of some of the work. I mean, they really wanted to make sure that we were up to par with industry standard, and because they know that certain fields are very competitive, and
Absolutely.
growing up in San Francisco and actually trying to find work in the San Francisco Bay Area, any metropolitan area,
Right.
we just had to have that edge. And at the time it wasn't fun. It wasn't. They just everything that they could think of that was wrong with any of my designs.
Yes.
Brutal.
Oh, yes. And the same for me,
Yeah.
and
I bet with
my-
illustration, I mean, you were,
Oh,
Just
yes.
tell us a little about that. What was it like?
At the time, I mean, the majority of the student body were illustration majors at the academy, so it was like a 60% illustration majors.
Yeah. I remember that.
And so the lady that ran the illustration department at the time, I mean, she was like old school New York illustrator, worked in ad agencies and all that. And so, I mean, she wasn't messing around. I mean, it's like you either did it right or you didn't do it at all.
Yeah.
And if you didn't do it right, do it again.
Yeah.
Do it again, and she had no qualms in telling you.
Yeah. It's quite, I had quite an educational experience, and there's a lot of different students coming from all over the world. It is
Oh, yes.
an internationally known
It is.
art school.
It
So
is.
I like I said, love and hate, relationship with my college, but ultimately it was a very, very good experience for me.
Yes.
So
Yes.
it was nice. Salvador had gone to Parsons for a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and then he traveled back up here and decided to go to school at Academy of Art.
Yes.
And the experience, what was the cultural experience for you being at that college and being in San Francisco?
Well, I'll tell you one thing.
Some of the things you learned, maybe.
The big difference between coming from Parsons to the academy was the difference between LA and San Francisco. I mean, LA is so hectic.
Yeah.
And, everybody's just like running around, and I got to the Bay Area and it was just like laid back, what's the rush,
Yes.
And I'm like, I think I like this.
We're just more like, we have that Northern California drawl, like,
There you go.
yeah,
There you go.
dude,
Right.
sure.
Right.
No,
Right.
but really there's a little bit of that too. I mean,
Yeah.
you gotta be pretty competitive when,
Absolutely.
but
Absolutely. And when I got to the academy, well, it was just nice to be in a program that was so strong. I mean, their illustration department was really strong. And so I felt like I was really learning a lot, but at the same time learning a lot just outside of the classroom as well. You know, because I mean, San Francisco just has so much to offer. You know, all the cultures that are there.
Yeah.
I mean, they just definitely expanded my worldview.
Even just going to an art supply store.
Oh,
You know,
yes.
they're huge.
They're huge. Yeah.
Huge. Walking into one, you can get lost if you don't know what the heck you're looking for and you don't know what to do. And just, and there's always that, you know, the favorites trend for the school, you know, what's everybody using now? What equipment do you like? You know, and
Right.
it's neat.
It is.
And just like I said, the cultural experience as well. It's I would highly recommend that school. But there's, you know, when we come back, we're going to take a real quick break. But when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about what Salvador is up to currently and some of his current projects. So give us a few minutes, and we will be back with Salvador Castillo. Welcome back to Breaking Barriers, our spotlight show for Wednesdays. My name is Jocelyn. I'm your host, and today's guest is artist Salvador Castío, and he is here to share with us some of his experiences, projects, and a little bit of his background. Salvador, thank you for stopping by at the station today.
Thank you.
Coming back from break, I know before this we were talking about different influences and the educational experience we've had. I've on the screen on the upper right there, you can see some of his illustrations that he's got currently actually no, this is past, present, and future.
Mm-hmm.
And
Some of those pieces are older.
Yeah, so
The ones right at the top are the newest ones in the series.
okay, so if you go to salvadorcastio.com, that's SALVADORCASTIO.com, you will go into his website and you'll be able to see a lot of his work there. I love the contrast in his work and the fine detail. This one was the most recent one that really got me interested. Oops, let's see here. Let me get back on there. And then you can see the detail in the work. I think for me, the beard did it. Okay? I think it was the beard. I even told him, dude, you're a machine. Look at that beard. Seriously, what's going on here? And that's the one thing that really caught my eye. Tell us a little bit about this particular piece. It's one of your latest ones and the project that you're currently working on.
Well, this is part of a series of black and white portraits, black and white ink portraits that I'm doing. The series is called the Belle Epoque series, which highlights luminaries from this period of art that stretches from 1871 to 1914. And it's just a very fertile period for artistic
Yes.
endeavor. And there were so many people that came out of that period. This particular person here is Gaudí, Antoni Gaudí. He's the architect for the Sagrada Familia Cathedral in Barcelona and many of the other buildings in the city. And so, when I was choosing who to draw, some of the people are more well known than others, but if they happen to be influential in any way, even if they're not well known, then there's a good chance that I'll be interested in doing something.
I think as long as they've got like a unique background and
Absolutely.
personality and just incredibly creative. So he's
Right. So, I mean, this is someone who, you're talking 100 years ago, longer, when the cathedral started, and I mean, they're still not finished with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's another decade before they complete the work on it.
Wow.
But by and large, I think a lot of these people, they're not that well known to the general public. Some may be, some not so much.
That's good.
So
I
just trying to
kind of
highlight.
like that. There's just like here in this area, in our general vicinity, we've got a lot of hidden gems that we don't know about, and we need to pull a lot of that. That's one of the things that I like to do with this show is with Breaking Barriers.
Right.
There's some really unique characters, unique people, incredibly creative people that that are not on social media sometimes,
Absolutely.
or they're not very vocal.
Right.
Or they're just kind of very busy hiding away, being creative. And so I like to try and pull those people out.
Right.
Let's see. Let's take a look at your other ones here.
So in all these pieces, you can see bits and pieces of my influences. The biggest would be comic book art, because of the technique that I use, the brush and ink technique. That's a native technique to American comics. And so in the beginning, we talked about me going to San Diego Comic-Con when I was 18. My intent was to be a comic book artist, but as time went on, I discovered that it really wasn't what I wanted to do. I love the medium. I love the techniques involved with the medium, but I had kind of grown out of the because I grew up reading superhero comics, you know, and
Sure.
then I kind of grew out of that, and I wanted something different. And then especially after graduating from school, you know, I had a bunch of other influences and stuff. So that right there led me to just kind of decide that I wanted to pursue more of a fine art path with my work, and taking this native technique from comics is something that I feel that I can use for self-expression. A lot of people, I think, probably don't look at it that way. You know, they look at it for what it is, which is, I mean, there's like an assembly line process in the comics. And so, you know, you have the one guy that does the drawings in pencil, and then they have what they call the inker, who embellishes his lines.
Right, right.
You know, and so I wanted to take that and just use it for whatever, because it can be applied to any subject
Any of
matter.
it, yeah.
Yeah.
I love how you did the hair on Dolly.
Oh, thank you.
It's so glossy. I mean, like you can literally run your fingers through it. It's really.
Right.
Did you use any other medium to highlight the white, or is that just?
That's just the white of the paper.
Okay.
Yeah. These all these drawings have a particular look to them because of the brush. It gives a very different look as opposed to a pen. You know, I like to think of it as a more soulful look. You know, I don't know if you can even really describe that, but there's something about using a brush that there's an expressiveness that comes through.
I think
Yeah.
it's a lot more organic.
Yeah.
You know, you get different variants of the width and the point. Like
Right.
it's not as
Right.
you know, structured, mechanical.
Right, and then
But
when you use a brush, you know, you're drawn to using or putting down areas that are like big areas of dark space, you know, and shadows and stuff like that, because it's easily accomplished with
You
a
had
brush.
some.
You know, but you can also get amazing things like the texture on this hat or on his beard,
Yeah.
you know, that you can't really. You can with a pen, but it's a little more labor intensive to get it to come out.
Yeah. Everyone, like I mentioned earlier, when we came back from break, if you want to take a look at some of Salvador's work, you can log on to salvadorcastillo.com, salvadorcastio.com. You can see a lot of his work and a lot of other information there about Salvador. It's really neat. And the website itself is so simple. It's what I have to look at all day, every day is website design and structure. And it's nice to see, you know, really simple websites.
Yeah, that's something that I had in mind when I put the website up, to keep it simple, because I've encountered far too many websites that are just too complicated. You know, you got to click here, you got to click there, and things pop up, and so on and so forth. You know, I just wanted it to be simple and smooth.
Tell us a little bit about this image. I find it really intriguing. It's neat.
This image is part of a series of portraits that I did of three women from different cultures. A few years back, I was approached by a German photographer via Flickr, who was working
They
with
found
her.
you on Flickr.
They found me on Flickr.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah. She was working with a local museum in Germany who was putting on an exhibition that was aimed at women from different cultures that were in Germany at the time, or in the town that she lives in. And she saw one of my images and said, you know, I really like this. Could we maybe work something out where you could do some other images and we could use it as part of like the ad campaign? And I said, sure. And she said, you know, I'd like to interview you as well, you know. And so the interview is actually still available. It's available on my website. So you can read it there. And then so I did 3 images. So this one being a woman from Peru, from the Andes. So just, and then I did an Indian woman.
Was there on?
And then,
there it is. This
and
one
an African.
as well.
Yes, there's
there
the
it
Indian
is.
woman. Yes.
Great.
Yeah.
Pretty.
So these were really fun. I mean, these were finding reference and just kind of learning to draw things that are native to these cultures. Was a good experience.
Was we were talking about different influences earlier, different artists.
Yes.
Who do you think was, or were the ones that influenced you the most? Which artists
Wow.
were the ones that?
Well,
I know you've pulled a lot from different techniques and different ideas from various ones, but which one stands out the most for you?
Well, I think for pen and ink, when I was 16, there was a book that I discovered called The Studio, and that's a really well-known illustration monograph that details the workings of these 4 artists that got together in a midtown studio in Manhattan, a collective. They were at the time at the very top of the comic book world. They were, rock stars. And they said, well, we want to move on and do fine art now. So they all left comics. And went off and set up a studio and produced fine art for the next few years. One of them, a guy named Bernie Wrightson, who sadly recently passed away, when he was there, spent 7 years illustrating Frankenstein.
Okay. Yeah.
And that was published in the early 80s, but that is a milestone of pen and ink illustration. When I saw those illustrations, they blew my mind. I'd never seen anything like it. And he's influenced by earlier illustrators, from the 20s and so on. But the work that he did in those illustrations just really, I thought, my God, I have to do pen and ink. It's something that I really want to do.
Yeah.
And so there's those older illustrators that he looked at. Some of them I've looked at myself, and studied, and a lot of his contemporaries, a lot of Bernie Wrightson's contemporaries are also influenced by older illustrators and people outside of comics, people that that are just painters, and so that kind of just led me down a path to discovering lots of different artists from different areas that had a really big impact. That book's been hugely influential to lots of people who have followed illustration or fine art.
What is there any other medium that you work with that you like?
The mediums that I like the most are pen and ink and watercolor.
Yes.
And pencil as well. But as you can see, stuff like this, you can see Alphonse Mucha's influence, the famous Art Nouveau artist, but you can also see some Celtic influence and, the comic book influence as well.
That's wonderful. Gosh,
so
how long did a piece, like something like this, how long does it take?
This
There's
piece
a lot
here,
of detail.
Yeah, this piece here from start to finish, you're looking at about 40 to 50 hours.
Yeah.
From initial thumbnail sketch to pencil rough, to finalized pencil drawing and then inking it. It's about 40 to 50 hours.
How big is this piece?
This is 10 by 15 inches. So they're not huge, but they're big enough to where, if they were any bigger, I'd never finish them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh gosh, yeah.
and I have done pieces. I have done pieces that were bigger, and they take months to finish.
Yeah.
So that's not something that I want to be doing. As I want to get things done, projects completed, you know. So
I love this one. It's just totally, absolutely stunning.
my wife's favorite piece.
That one, the ribbon.
Yeah, she says, we can never sell this.
No, you better not.
She's like, this original will never leave this house,
Yeah.
you know. So,
So again, this is SalvadorCastillo.com. If you log on to his website, you will see all different types of illustrations that he's done. When we come back from break, we're going to take a real quick break again. When we come back from break, we're going to talk about maybe a little bit of the local art scene, what's going on over here versus what's going on globally. And also, you know, a few art walks that, you know, we've done, or maybe even talk about some of the local, more formal museums and galleries nearby. We'll see what it'll bring us. So we'll be back in a few minutes. All right, thanks. on to Breaking Barriers. I'm your host, Jocelyn, with our guest today, artist Salvador Castío. Before we went on break, we were talking about some of his art on his website, salvadorcastillo.com. If you log in, you can see a lot of his illustrations and work on his website. But we're just kind of going over, some of the other things that we needed to talk about. I was looking at some of the questions that I had, and one of them was, if you were to compare your work with a known artist, who would you say is your doppelganger?
That's a great question. I think the best answer I can give you in regard to that is my style. I think, like a lot of artists, it's made up of bits and pieces from different artists. So I've got some of them might not be too apparent, when you look at my work, but they're there. I've got to have influence, from 19th century romantic painters, American comic book art, French comics, some pinup artists like Alberto Vargas, H.R. Giger.
That's my favorite.
The famed, movie designer, the designer of Alien, the alien creature.
Yes, that's true.
That we all know and love.
Well, it was fun the other day when we were at the Hagen, and you had asked if you had a piece of art that you could hang above your couch, what would it be? Right. Someone said Monet and other ones, and I wasn't sure. And then I looked at my couch and I realized my couch is black leather.
Right.
And then Salvador said, it's going to be a Giger piece. I'm like, okay, maybe not the more like crazy pieces, but a little bit subtle ones. But
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, bits and pieces from, I have lots of influences, like I said, Alphonse Mucha, Art Nouveau from the early 19th century, Edward Burne-Jones, who was an English romantic pre-Raphaelite painter, late 19th century, French comic book artists like Mobius, Philippe Drouillet, they've had a big influence on me. The guys from the studio, Bernie Wrightson, Barry Windsor Smith, Jeff Jones, Mike Kaluta. They've all influenced me and inspired me along the way, as well as some of the people. I had the pleasure of studying with Baron Story at the Academy, who is a hugely influential illustrator. He did a lot of work for Time Magazine in the 70s. He taught actually a lot of artists that came into comics in the 80s, late 80s, who came in with techniques from illustration. So you saw a lot of them doing fully painted comics that were very, not completely unknown, but certainly for American comics, not something you saw very often, so...
That's good.
Yeah,
that's
people
a
like
lot.
that.
That's a real big variety, and it's you were able to narrow it down and create your own style. That's what's important. I know that, I see a lot of young up and coming artists locally and all throughout whenever I go to the city or in the Bay Area, where they're still trying to evolve and they're still trying to find what their style is.
Absolutely.
And it's like, ooh, I know where you're going with that. You almost got it. I could feel it. They're like right there. And I think that with a little bit more time, like you were saying earlier, just keep practicing and keep drawing.
I think that the important thing in regard to that is don't worry about style. Worry about learning to draw properly. Style comes later.
It does.
You should never put style before learning to draw properly. Because
learn your foundations first.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Learn about light and dark.
Absolutely. Yeah. Learn all those important basic things, composition, perspective, light and shadow, proportion, anatomy, all those things. Learn those first, then worry about a style. Because, style kind of just comes along. It kind of develops organically as you go along. So
How do you feel about the local view when it comes to art and more of the global view when it comes to art?
well, for myself, for as long as I can remember, I mean, I've always had a global view in terms of my work. And
I noticed that I was just looking through your website. I noticed that you got different clients from all over.
all over, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, I've sent pieces,
Internationally. So-
yeah, definitely, and that's always been my goal, but I understand that there are people who are interested in the local art scene, and that's terrific. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You have to follow your own truth as an artist. You have to decide what it is you want, and some people are happy just being local to the area, and that's great, but my ambition from day one practically was get it out there to as many people as possible. And so thankfully we live in an age where we have the internet.
Yes.
We have social media.
That's true.
Because when I got out of school, these were like around, but they were not what they are now. So back then, you had to lug your portfolio and knock on doors, for people to look at your stuff,
Yeah,
it's
pretty
not
brutal.
yeah, and back then to say, oh, well, I have an international audience, it sounded a bit pretentious to where now you truly do have an international audience. I look at my website, the people that come to it, they come from all over.
Yeah, I had actually, I was looking through some of my comments from our show a few weeks ago. I can't remember when it was, but the person was from Indonesia, and I thought that was kind of cool. Did you know that, David? There we got like international, viewers here.
That's fantastic.
It's nice to check on the YouTube.
Yeah. I just
that's
like,
nice.
wow. And they commented, hey, that's cool, or something like that. And they're from way across the ocean somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
I always thought,
Yeah.
wow, okay, we're covering the local area, but we do have viewers from outside of the area.
Oh, absolutely. Even on Facebook, before today, I promoted the interview to all my followers on my fan page, which you can follow me at facebook.com/Salvador Castillo, SalvadorCastio. And that goes for Twitter and Instagram as well. That's my handle. So please follow me there.
Yeah, definitely. He's got Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and you can find him also. I think that covers it all, though, right?
I'm on,
For now.
I'm on Tumblr as well.
Yeah.
And other, like.
But these are the main
Those are the main
ones.
ones. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. But I made sure to put it out there that I was going to be on today. And I even worked up an announcement in Spanish.
I know, I saw that. That was really neat.
Because I
That's
have a lot of people
fantastic.
that follow me, like in Spain
Yeah.
and stuff. So, I wanted to make sure that they knew
Yeah,
that
that
we were
was
going to be
neat.
on today.
I
so.
didn't think of that. I thought, you know what? That is a good idea. I will have to start doing the bilingual announcements as well.
Yeah,
So
you can do it in Tagalog.
Yeah. Seriously, Spanish and Tagalog.
There you go.
Yeah. So, as far as your future plans,
My
got
future
anything
plans.
going on? You've got the Belle Epoque series currently.
Yes, I'm working on that. I'm about to the halfway point. My plan is to do 36 overall because I'd like to eventually publish a card set where you have image on one side and biographical information on the back. And then I also would like to get these out so that people can see them. So, somewhere down the line, I think there's a show in the works,
Yes. Yes.
here and in other places. So,
Definitely.
yeah, definitely.
So, just recently, Salvador and I hadn't been to the Hagen Museum in, I don't know, over a decade. When I first moved to the Central Valley, I visited the Hagen Museum. It was really nice. I just haven't had the time to go back and visit. And so just recently, just a few days ago, Salvador and I went over there to visit, and there's a lot of really amazing pieces of art that I just didn't pay attention to before the first time I went to. And there's a collection of Leyendeckers that Salvador can tell you about that are tucked away at the Hagen, and they're beautiful. They're
Yes,
gorgeous.
Yes, we're very fortunate. All my friends that I went to art school with are highly envious of the fact that I have this absolutely mind-blowing collection of J.C. Leyendecker, who was one of the preeminent illustrators in the golden age of illustration. The Hagen has the largest museum collection of Leyendecker work. I mean, I'm not kidding you. People probably from New York
See if I could pull it up
probably want to come here
and check it out.
and see this collection, because his work is just phenomenal. I mean, he influenced Norman Rockwell, and he was classically trained in France. And he
I
worked.
wish I could find the pieces that we actually have at the
Right.
Hagen.
He worked for the Saturday Evening Post. That's where most people know him from. And he's just one of those. If you go back to the 20s, late 20s, 30s, 40s, his work is everywhere. You know, Arrow Collars. He's well known for doing the illustrations for advertisements for them. And this is a name that I was just like drilled into my head when I was attending the academy. You know, the illustration director, Barbara Bradley, like I said, she was very old school, and this is like somebody that she was just like she drilled it into our heads. You know, this is what it looks like when you know how to draw and paint properly. You know, this is the bar. You know, and the fact that we have so much of his work at the Hagen, I would encourage any aspiring student to go there once they have them back up on the wall, because they're going through a process of refurbishment.
Yes, and they're also having the Picasso
exhibit, yes.
Which, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure.
I do have some of the pictures, but
from what I understand, they're etchings that Picasso did sometime in the 50s based on bullfighting. And I think it's great that they can pull a name like Picasso to the area, because there's a lot of people that might not have the opportunity to see his work, whether it's reproductions or originals. You know, so I think it's a fantastic opportunity for people here locally to be exposed to someone like Picasso, who's like such a giant in the world of art. You know,
I was just showing them one of my favorite ones from that collection.
Oh yes.
Can't remember which panel that was. Let's see, that was panel 17, plate 17.
Right.
Yeah, that was good. So if you guys have a chance, go to the Hagen and take a look at the Picasso exhibit. It's really cool.
It's pretty amazing.
And I know that they're going through a lot of the renovation currently, but it will be ready soon. Probably towards the end of the year.
Probably. And I'm sure it's just going to look fantastic.
It's going to look great. So, so we went and we talked to Susie.
Yes, Susan Obert.
Yeah,
yes.
She's just a terrific lady over there. And she told us a little bit about what's going on. And I'm so happy to have met her. Thank you for introducing me to her as well, Salvador.
Very gracious. You know, she cares a lot about the museum's future and what's going on with the museum. You know, and that's reflected in the work she does there. You know, and I have faith that she'll do wonderful things in the future for the museum.
Yeah. So, Salvador, just one last time, for your contact information before we sign off.
Yes, you can go to my website and salvadorcastillo.com. I point out Castillo, Castio, no L's. And I have a contact form that you can reach me through. If you look at the menu on the front page, you'll see the contact form over to the right.
If I go to home?
No, it's right over to the right. Is it up there?
Oh, here it is.
There you go.
There we go.
There you go. Just hit that, fill it out.
And yeah, if you have any questions for
Any
Salvador,
questions,
if you're interested in
or
any
if
of
you're
his
interest-
work or have
Yeah.
questions about his work,
Yeah,
just
if you're interested in a piece of work or anything, you know.
that's one way you can get a hold of him is through his website,
Yep.
salvadorcastillo.com. He also is on Facebook. I think if you do a search for Salvador Castillo, which is Castio as his apellido, his last name.
Yes, very good.
Same. It's the same word in Tagalog too,
Right,
believe it or
right.
not. You will find his
Oh, yes.
page.
Now, if you Google me, Google might ask you, did you mean Salvador Castillo, Castillo, and then, or did you mean Salvador Castillo, Castio? Click the Castio.
Right.
Right.
Terrific.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by our station.
thank you. It was a
Really
pleasure.
awesome to spend the hour with you here and learning a little bit more about you and your artwork.
Thank you.
And we're looking forward to maybe hearing back from you. We'll check back with you in
Definitely.
a few months and see what you're up to and
Sounds
see
good.
what else you have going. It's going to be
Sounds
pretty
good.
exciting to see.
Looking forward
All right.
to it.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week on Breaking Barrier Spotlight on the Arts for Wednesday. My name is Jocelyn, and we're signing off. Bye.
Fall from the sky. You free me from this height. After all alone, the sky is my home. Free falling through the sky. Free me from this gravity.